history of Russia and the civilization approach to Russia. What I really like in Hattington's idea is the definition of so-called torn states. Torn states are the states which find themselves in the midst of conflict or not conflict, not the right word, but in the midst of more than one civilization. The typical example is Turkey. Turkey is an Islamic state, a member of NATO, and all the events. It's just amazing. I think I really enjoy listening news from Turkey because it's one of the prolific example how intriguing the not the history but the current sort of political agenda or life can be in these very special states, and they are torn apart. Turkey is struggling to find its identity. It's a Muslim Islamic state, but which strives to be a real European country. And interestingly enough, Hattington refers to Russia as a torn state as well. And that's exactly where I started. When he says Russia is a torn state, he talks about Russians, Russians from Russia. Yeah? So if you forget about Tatars, Chechens, Chukchas, or whoever, Russians are fairly European orientated. And if it wasn't for this another 193 different nations, Russia would probably align itself very quickly with Europe. But since there are other people who are kind of having their own interests, their own ideas, Russians is a torn nation within the formation of the Russian state, and that's basically dictates it defines the character of the Russian history, and that's why Russian history is so dramatic. It's always it's always two different. It's plus and minus, and the country is kind of torn apart by these different sort of ideas, ideologies, and so forth. And the last point I want to make, it's more like just a curiosity thing, but if you accept my point of view that the United States of America and Western Europe are actually not a single unity, these are very neighboring but two independent or different civilizations, then this one even explains what the Brexit is. Because when I said at the beginning or some minutes ago that there is nothing in common between, let's say, Germany and the United States apart from democracy maybe, but if you take Great Britain or England and United States, common history, common language. When you're listening to Beatles, sometimes you're not sure, are you listening to a British band or British band? Common literature. So the Britain and United States are very, very close society, close communities. And maybe on some cautious level, the Brexit vote is not necessarily about just some economical criteria and so forth. Maybe it's a vote of the torn states, Great Britain, in between two different camps. And maybe Great Britain decided that basically it would rather ally itself with United States, or at least be independent and not be a firm member of one of these camps. So once again, I would like to go back to where I started, and I said, this is a model how Russian history developed, and the model allows you to predict the future. And of course, it's very dangerous. It's almost stupid to predict the future. But if you accept some of these arguments, you will say that Putin now is at this phase where Russia is completely self-reliant and becoming more and more independent, isolated, and self-isolated. And the next phase would be denial, negation of this policy. And if you take an example of the Soviet history, you have Stalin, who more or less was also promoting these ideas, and the next guy who came is Khrushchev, who was kind of a leader of the not comparable in its grandeur to Stalin, some kind of, I would say, a joke perhaps. And we already tried that. And when Mr. Medvedev came into power, he kind of started introducing this Khrushchev type of ideas, grand projects, new ideas, and I think to a certain extent Putin's return into power, although it was most likely pre-planned in advance, but it was kind of the response to this kind of ideas. So from a Russian point of view, we don't want to have another Khrushchev. Somehow we would like to avoid it, but it's very difficult. And there will be powers which will be not happy with Putin, which will be happy with his demise or his kind of withdraw from a policy, and that's a danger factor. So my prediction that the forces of history will try to move Russia into this direction, and this is for Russia, it's not a very good direction at all. In regards to how the Russia will develop further sort of in the world, I think you do not need to analyze the Russia as such, Norway, France. You need to look at the civilization confrontations, and obviously the future. The main conflict most likely in the future will be between two greatest civilizations we have now. It's the United States and China, and both Russia and Europe will have to find their way in a new world. And Russia is trying to increase its influence. The war in Syria is one example, and I am sure that Russia, at least until the Putin is in power, will continue along the same track. So it's a very dangerous situation now for Russia in Ukraine, but who knows, maybe the sort of all these sanctions will create a kind of, will increase the pain threshold, and Russia may undertake some unilateral actions in Ukraine. Russia is now expanding into Africa, and I think that's where the next sort of political commotions and news will happen, and this trend will continue. So as far as the internal policy, watch for the next Khrushchev. As far as the external foreign politics, expect. I'm not making decisions. I'm just predicting. Expect that there will be more things like Syria contemplated by current leadership until it sort of changes. So, thank you.
Very good, Igor. I will revert to you in Norwegian because I know for sure that you speak fluent Norwegian, you read and you do understand Norwegian, so it should be good. Masse interessante tanker.